We often think of communication as the cornerstone of relationships. But what transpires when that cornerstone is removed? When words cease to flow and quietude prevails, what remains? The resonance of absence can be more profound than presence. When someone stops conversing with us, we confront a reflection of our own inner thoughts. This narrative delves into the emotions and musings that surface when an individual abruptly withdraws their voice from our lives. It explores how people interpret silence, not as emptiness, but as a potent message.
Eastern philosophies suggest that dependence on affirmation, on verbal exchange, is a root of discontent. When communication halts, it's not necessarily about being abandoned. It's our attachment to their presence that causes anguish. The mind, like an agitated current, initiates the construction of narratives. Have I caused offense? Do I no longer matter? What are their current thoughts about me? But the reality is straightforward: silence is neither an adversary nor an ally. It's merely a reflection of our own minds. The way we perceive another's silence reveals more about ourselves than about them. Let us immerse ourselves in this tale, where silence metamorphoses into the most articulate exchange ever experienced. The cessation of words. Two individuals had journeyed alongside each other for years. They interchanged words as naturally as flowing water. Laughter, comprehension, and companionship had served as the foundation of their bond. Then, unexpectedly, the words ceased. One person turned away without explanation, no anger, no farewell, just silence. The other was left in a state of bewilderment, caught between reminiscence and the immediate present. Initially, disbelief took hold. Perhaps they are preoccupied, he reasoned. Perhaps they are entangled in their own struggles. However, as days transitioned into weeks, realization emerged. The silence was deliberate. Thus, the mind embarked on its perpetual cycle of speculation. The mind's incessant queries: did I offend them? The initial thought was assigning blame. The mind, ever eager to pinpoint fault, turned inward. He replayed past conversations, scrutinizing them for a misplaced word, a forgotten instance that might have triggered this quiet departure. Eastern philosophies posit that the mind clings to the past, attempting to reshape it into something divergent. However, the past is immutable, akin to a river that cannot reverse its course. Perhaps they are testing my patience, he contemplated. The notion of ego materialized. Was this a contest of pride? If he extended an olive branch, would it signify defeat? If he maintained silence, would it indicate indifference? Herein lies the suffering of attachment. The mind entangled in the need for clarity, contorting itself in knots. Yet, the wise discern that clarity is not invariably granted. Sometimes, it must be relinquished. Subsequently, another thought arose: perhaps I was never truly valued. The mind, now shifting from self-reproach to resentment, constructed an alternate narrative. They were never genuine companions. If they were, they would have elucidated their silence. But what if there was no villain? What if silence held no malice? Could the mind accept ambiguity without transforming it into anguish? The reflection of silence. Eastern philosophies teach that suffering emanates not from events themselves, but from our interpretations of them. A wise person, upon encountering silence, does not inquire why they have ceased communication, but instead asks, why does this silence unsettle me? Silence is akin to a mirror, it reflects our deepest insecurities. If we dread abandonment, silence feels like rejection. If we crave affirmation, silence feels like punishment. As the days elapsed, the man began to contemplate his thoughts, rather than grapple with them. If they are silent, let them remain silent, he resolved. If they wish to return, they will return. If not, then the path simply diverges. He realized a profound truth: words were never the genuine connection. The bond was not forged from conversations, but from understanding. If understanding persisted, silence could not fracture it. If understanding was lost, then words could not mend it. Consequently, he ceased anticipating an explanation. He ceased fabricating narratives in his mind. He simply allowed silence to exist. The other side of silence, but what of the other individual, the one who departed? Did they not also ponder? Did their silence not speak in their own mind? Indeed, it did. For the one who left, silence was not intended to inflict harm. It was merely an expression of inner metamorphosis. Perhaps they felt they no longer belonged in the same discourse. Perhaps they sought solitude to comprehend themselves. Perhaps they lacked the ability to articulate what needed to be expressed. Not all departures are meant to inflict wounds, some are simply the soul's manner of shifting direction. Eastern wisdom dictates that not everything necessitates closure. Some things simply conclude. The mind, desperate for finality, grapples with this truth. Yet, the wise comprehend that closure is not something bestowed upon us, it is something we cultivate within ourselves. The resolution within, as time unfolded, the man discovered serenity. He realized that whether the other person spoke again or remained silent indefinitely, it did not alter the essence of what they had shared. Attachment had been the true genesis of his suffering. His need for explanations, his desire for control over another's choices, these were the chains that confined his peace. But now, he was liberated. One day, as he traversed the same path alone, he witnessed a bird taking flight. It did not solicit the wind's destination. It did not seek permission to depart the branch. It simply soared. He smiled, and in that moment, he comprehended. Silence is not an absence, it is simply a different mode of being. The silence that speaks. So, what do they think when you cease communication? They reflect upon themselves. They contemplate you. They wonder. They speculate. They struggle. But ultimately, what they truly perceive in your silence is the sound of their own mind. Some will seek answers, some will create them. Some will find peace, while others will remain restless. But within the silence, there is invariably a lesson. And the greatest lesson of all is that which is destined to remain will remain, with or without words. And that which is destined to fade will fade, regardless of how many words are spoken. Therefore, do not fear silence. It is not the enemy. It is simply the space where truth unveils itself. Allow silence to speak, and listen not with your ears, but with your heart. The true essence of silence is not a conclusion, nor is it a void. It is a presence unto itself, a language beyond verbal expression. Those who misunderstand silence perceive it as abandonment, rejection, or punishment. But those who comprehend it recognize it as a mirror, reflecting the inner workings of the mind. Let us further contemplate the wisdom encapsulated within silence. 1. Silence reveals attachment. Eastern philosophies teach that suffering arises from attachment. When someone ceases communication, what is it that truly wounds us? It is not the absence of their words, but our attachment to their presence. The mind clings to familiarity, to continuity. It fears change, for change threatens the illusion of control. But the truth is, we possess nothing, not even the relationships we cherish. Every connection exists in a delicate equilibrium, susceptible to change at any moment. When we feel wounded by silence, we must ask, was I attached to their presence, or did I truly value their essence? For if we genuinely value someone, their silence does not erase their worth. And if their absence causes immense suffering, it is not they who harm us, but our own resistance to change. 2. Silence is a teacher of the self. When words cease, the mind begins to speak more loudly. It fills the emptiness with questions, doubts, and assumptions. Eastern practices teach that every external event is an opportunity for inner reflection. If someone's silence disturbs us, we must not only look at them, we must look at ourselves. Do we fear being forgotten? Do we feel unworthy without affirmation? Do we measure our significance by how much others engage with us? If so, then the silence is not the cause of suffering, it is the revealer of it. In silence, we encounter our insecurities. But if we embrace them instead of resisting, silence becomes our teacher, rather than our tormentor. 3. Not all departures require an explanation. The mind craves understanding. It wants to know why someone has withdrawn, why they have chosen silence instead of words. But does understanding truly bring peace? Some silences are not meant to be explained. Some people depart because they lack the words to express their feelings. Others leave because their path has diverged, and they do not wish to burden us with an explanation. Eastern wisdom reminds us that not every question has an answer, and not every answer will satisfy the question. Closure is not something others can bestow upon us, it is something we must cultivate within ourselves. The need for explanations is the mind's attempt to resist the impermanence of things. But life is impermanent by nature. Some things will remain mysteries, and we must be at peace with that. For, silence is not always personal. The greatest misconception of silence is believing it is always about us. They stopped talking to me, did I do something wrong? They are avoiding me, do they hate me? They no longer reach out, do they no longer care? But often, silence has nothing to do with us. People carry burdens we cannot see. They struggle with their own doubts, fears, and transformations. Sometimes their silence is not rejection, it is self-preservation. Eastern philosophies teach that the ego personalizes everything, it believes everything revolves around me. But when we release the ego, we understand their silence is not about me, it is about them. Compassion allows us to step beyond our own feelings and recognize the struggles of others. Instead of feeling abandoned, we can feel understanding. Instead of resentment, we can offer patience. 5. True connection is beyond words. If a connection is genuine, it does not rely on constant conversation. If understanding is true, it does not fade with silence. Some friendships, some loves exist beyond words. A moment of eye contact. A fleeting thought, the unspoken bond between souls, these things are stronger than language. As a wise man was once asked, how do you know if a friendship is real? He smiled and said, if you can sit in silence together without discomfort, then you have found something real. Those who need constant reassurance through words are often insecure in the connection. But those who trust in the bond know that silence is not a threat, it is simply another form of presence. When we understand this, we no longer fear silence, we embrace it as a natural rhythm in relationships, knowing that words are just one way of expressing connection. 6. The peace of letting go. In the end, the deepest teaching of silence is this: let go. Let go of the need to understand everything. Let go of the expectation that others must always explain themselves. Let go of the attachment to words as proof of connection. When someone stops talking to you, accept it as it is. If they return, welcome them without resentment. If they do not, wish them well in your heart. Eastern philosophies teach the beauty of impermanence. Everything is in motion. People enter our lives, and they leave. Some return, some do not. This is the way of all things. When we cling to what is gone, we suffer. But when we accept the flow of life, we find peace. Silence as a gift. Instead of seeing silence as something negative, can we see it as a gift? Silence teaches us patience. Silence teaches us self-reflection. Silence teaches us detachment from unnecessary suffering. Silence teaches us the true nature of connection. If someone stops talking to you, do not be afraid. Do not seek answers where none are needed. Instead, listen to what silence has to offer. For in the quiet, the deepest truths are heard.
Ultimately, silence teaches us self-reliance, the value of unspoken bonds, and acceptance of life's impermanence. See silence not as an end, but as a path to deeper understanding. Thanks for watching. Hope you found this insightful. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe for more content. Click the bell to never miss an update. We appreciate your support.